Insurance is the number one concern people have when they're moving to Florida, and specifically the Tampa area. We just had big hurricanes last season and premiums have gone up, carriers have left. Let's make sense of this mess a little bit right now. I'm Sam, and this is Living in Tampa. We make these videos for you about what it's like to live and move to the whole Tampa area. We also have all kinds of other things for you, but every other week we have webinars. Last week we had our webinar and we talked about homeowners insurance. Super fun conversation. I brought on our preferred insurance broker. I asked him a bunch of questions. He was able to answer everyone that attended's questions. It was super fun. And I know this insurance broker well because he's helped me with $250,000 of insurance claims in the past 18 months. But let's talk for a few minutes about the mess of insurance in Florida. Why is it such a mess? There's a couple of reasons. So a lot of companies have left in the past, 5 to 10 years. A lot of the big providers just don't sell homeowners insurance down here. State Farm, companies like that, they sell car insurance, but not homeowners insurance. But a lot of them have also just left in these past few years. And then a lot of the ones that have left in the past few years, they claim the reason they're leaving is legal expenses, meaning their legal expenses are making them unprofitable in the state of Florida. Now, there's a lot of things that make them have higher legal expenses in Florida, but DeSantis is actually helping to make that a little bit better for these companies. So yeah, you might red flag. Why is he making it better for the companies? If he makes it better for the companies, we will have more competition. If we have more competition, we will have lower prices and we will have better service. Right now, if there's not enough competition, the prices can go up no matter what, and the service can go down no matter what if you have no other option. And let me give a personal example about this. Not as impactful as insurance, but I live in an area of unincorporated Pasco County. We have private trash service. You can pick from one of 6 companies. You pay them, I think it's like $40 a month for them to come collect our trash twice a week. And they are super nice because they know we have other options. And that's a big deal. We need consumers to have other options. Just like when you go to a car dealership to buy a car, that salesperson knows you have a lot of other options. So they're going out of their way to take care of you. And maybe they're being a little pushy sometimes. We're not advocating for that, but they are well aware that you have so many other options. If you're looking for a truck, there's a lot of companies that make trucks and a lot of even other Ford dealers that you could go buy a truck from. So these companies have stated legal expenses as a big reason why they have left. Now, a big part of that was that you could sue your insurance company and they would be forced to cover your legal expenses. Now, that caused a big rise in expenses, but there's this other thing that happened that muddied the water even more. It's called the assignment of benefits. What this means is this is like classic storm chaser behavior. Say you own a roofing company and you realize there was just a big storm. You go knock on the doors, which great way to get business. Then what these specific contractors would do, they would have you sign over an assignment of benefit, meaning if they found damage, they would take over the claim process for you. They'd manage it all for you. And they pitch it that way. Hey, this is gonna make it so much easier for you. We're super familiar working with insurance companies. We'll make sure your claim gets paid. You sign this thing, they go up on your roof and they say, well, this is gonna be a $40,000 claim. But if you would have just filed a claim with your insurance company, it may have only been a $20,000 claim. So now you get this big difference. Once the insurance adjuster comes out, they say, oh no, this is only a $20,000 re-roof, but the roofer is saying it's $40,000. Now, there also is some supply and demand in this. Whenever storms happen and the roofing companies are super busy, they raise their prices. That is kind of basic business. And then a lot of them drive so much further to the storm affected area. And then their prices are higher because they're traveling, they're housing crews down there, all kinds of things like that. A lot of the companies that I work with are very transparent about that. And they will even tell you should go with a local company because they're going to be a lot cheaper than we are. And your insurance might not cover everything that we would have to charge you. And there are a lot of very honest companies, but there are some that have really muddied the water in all this. But how does that make insurance companies leave? How does it cost them more money? First of all, it costs them more money to pay out a bigger claim. maybe double sometimes. And then it costs them more money if they just want to fight it. And now they have this legal battle between their customer and them, and it just ties everything up for so long. So the litigation expenses, but then also assignment of benefits have been big problems in Florida, and hopefully those things will be resolved soon. Okay, real quick, a couple things maybe why you should listen to me at all. We are a team of realtors here in the area. We'd love a chance to earn your business, and we help our clients navigate these specific things again and again and again, whether it's during their purchase or it's after they've closed years later, they've got a claim they need to file. We're always happy to have those calls and help people navigate the whole thing. If you're interested in buying or selling real estate here in the Tampa area, we would love to hear from you. Call, text, or email anytime. So when we are helping clients purchase homes, there's a certain inspection that was needed here in Florida. Specifically, if your home is of a certain age, you need a 4-point inspection and a wind mitigation inspection. Wind mitigation is more related to the age of the roof. 4-point inspection, everybody has to have this. Your insurance needs this. This is checking 4 main things, 4 points. Is your roof free of leaks? Is your plumbing free of leaks? Is your electric free of hazards? And does your heating and air work? It's those 4 things. Those are your 4-point. If there's any red flags with any of that, some insurance carriers are just going to deny you. Most of the things on the 4-point are typically pretty easy to fix. If there's a big leak in the roof, it's a little different. Your wind mitigation report is checking how the roof is attached to the home. If it was done within the past 10 years, it's going to have longer nails. And then even down to how the trusses are attached to the walls. All those things get discovered in the wind mitigation report. We're going to go into that a bit more as we talk about things to look for to have more affordable insurance. Another reason I bring a specific amount of information to this conversation is because I grew up with a dad that sells insurance. All these terms, all this lingo, all this back and forth with companies, and we'll talk about things like reinsurance a little bit. All these things I just grew up hearing. If you grew up and your dad was a mechanic, you know a lot more about engines than I do, I promise. I grew up with a dad that was selling insurance, and so was his dad, and so was his dad. I've also been through a lot of big insurance claims. So you've probably seen videos about my flood claims, but before that, I lived in Colorado Springs. And before that, I lived in Oklahoma City area. Those are the 2 hail capitals of the world. I've had so many hail claims on my cars, and it kept coming out positive on those, which is kind of interesting. I would always propose to keep the car. Then I would keep the car and drive it for a little while. Then I would sell it with hail damage. People are okay with that in those kind of states. And I would always be positive on used cars for like 10 years. It was a great run. So a lot of hail claims, but then additionally, I've had 2 major flood claims since I moved to Florida. The first one, Hurricane Idalia, there's about 18 inches of water in my house, which they say if you have 6 inches of water in your house, it's a 6-figure insurance claim. So we had 18 inches the first time. A little over a year later, we had 40 inches of water in the house. Wild. So I've been through the process. I understand it very, very well. I'm always happy to help people navigate the flood claim process. Always happy to refer different contractors and those people that I've now developed good relationships with. I like to joke with them. I'm just working on getting really good at renovating this one house again and again and again. Hopefully there's not a third again. So those are some factors. We navigate this all the time as realtors, but also I have kind of a backstory with these kind of things. I want to get into the main things to consider to make sure your home insurance is more affordable. And I'll give some very specific examples, even like my house that I'm in right now compared to the other house of mine that has flooded a few times. The number one thing to consider is the age of the home. Yes, newer homes are cheaper for insurance. They just are. Now, it doesn't always have to be super new. It doesn't have to be brand new. It doesn't even have to be 2002, like whenever they changed the building codes. It doesn't have to be those things. The house I'm in right now is built in 1986. My insurance here is cheaper than some brand new houses. So it's not always like even odds, right? Like that. So we'll break down kind of how all these elements play in together, and I'll keep explaining this house specifically. Our other home was built in 1962. It's also in a flood zone. It has a very low pitched roof. All kinds of factors over there that make it very expensive. Home insurance on that home, which is about a $400,000 house, is $9,000 a year. On this house, which is about a $650,000 house, our insurance is $2,700 a year. We have no flood insurance here. We're not required to have flood insurance. We are very high. There's some lakes nearby, but we are at kind of a high point in our neighborhood. Our home built in 1962, just as a reference, is very close to the water. Now, it's very close to a bayou, which is brackish water, but that's still coastline. It's about 50 yards from that. when you look at the Gulf, it's about 3/4 of a mile away from the Gulf. Our home now is about 4 miles as the crow flies to the Gulf. Okay, that was age of home. Factor number 2 is the type of construction. Now, a lot of homes in Florida are built out of concrete block. Some houses that are 2-story are built concrete block or concrete block and wood. But there are some builders that build wood frame houses. That's not super uncommon. They treat wood to, be termite resistant for 99 years now. They do all kinds of things like that. And also just the way they build is better than it used to be. Another factor that our insurance broker brought up on the webinar was if you have a wood framed house and you have cement board siding, then it's considered cement veneer. And you do get big discounts almost as if it is a masonry house as opposed to a wood frame house. That was super interesting to me. I had never heard of that. But the type of construction is a big deal. And so let's say it's block on the bottom and wood on the top. If it's 33% wood frame, it is a wood frame house. So that's really the threshold to keep in mind. Some of these builders, like Lennar is building a giant neighborhood a couple miles from my house, and they do block on the bottom and wood on the top. It's just where is the balance? And those are brand new houses, so insurance will be pretty affordable. But eventually it's going to be viewed as a wood frame house. 20 years from now, is insurance going to be quite a bit more then? Okay, so that was type of construction. Now let's talk about the roof. First of all, the age of the roof. If a roof is older than 16 years old, sometimes you can't get insurance at all. And carrier to carrier has different rules on how old a roof can be for them to write the policy, but typically 16 years is that cutoff. We're also in a state where insurance doesn't pay for a lot of roofs around here. When I was in Colorado or Oklahoma, insurance pays for a lot of the roofs because of the hail. That doesn't happen a lot here. I mean, hail specifically, very rarely happens here, a little bit out to the east, but there's just not many things that destroy your roof here. Now, it might tear up a few shingles if, the wind is super high, but even that is not super common. Whenever we help our clients buy houses, the roof is a big negotiating factor. If it's not new, or if it's not, 10 years or newer, we're typically trying to get it replaced by the seller or get a big credit so that our buyer can replace it as soon as they move in. So the age of the roof is a big factor. The material of the roof is not a huge factor in your premium. Sometimes it's a bigger factor in how long it's expected to last. So a metal roof or a tile roof is expected to last longer than an asphalt roof. So whenever you're buying it, if it's 20 years old on a metal roof, it's not gonna raise red flags. That's more where it benefits you, and it does just last longer, so it's gonna be on there longer before you have to replace it again. We had one client whose tile roof was damaged during Hurricane Ian, and he filed a claim with his insurance company, USAA, and they didn't want to pay it out because it was just a little area that was damaged, and every roofer was like, no, it needs to be re-roofed because you can't find these tiles anymore. So the shape and color of the tiles couldn't be matched, so they had to replace the whole thing. His insurance company just dropped the claim, said, no, we're not paying anything then. So he had to get it tarped. This is a 4,000 square foot house, $1 million house. He had a blue tarp on it for 16 months, and he had to sue his insurance company to get them to pay this. He ended up getting paid out well, but that's a good example where a tile roof isn't always better. Sometimes it can be a headache. Okay, third thing with the roof is the attachment style. Newer houses, newer roofs, they're gonna have hurricane clips. Hurricane clip actually attaches the truss with a certain number of nails down into the wall of the house. It also attaches the board that the roof is attached to the trusses, a certain amount of nails. There's also toenails, which is a similar kind of thing. It just has a little bit less nails. It's very similar. There's a lot of different ways that builders, specifically newer builders, attach roofs to the walls. Some of them put these big straps all the way down into the wall and cement them into the wall. There's a lot of different levels to that. All that becomes very clear with your wind mitigation report. But that only becomes clear with your wind mitigation report if there's enough room for them to look up there and see. Our older house that was built in 62, the pitch of the roof is so low that when we bought the house, they couldn't even get up there and see. When we got the roof replaced, we were able to verify that it was done to the current codes. We got a little discount on our insurance. That was great. Sometimes you can only see it though when you replace the whole roof. Fourth thing with the roof specifically is the pitch of the roof. So that house, our other house is 12%. Technically it's flat. It's sloped. A ball would race off of it, but it's flat because of how low the pitch is. Now, when we bought the house, it had a rolled asphalt roof on it. We were able to put normal shingles on it, which looks way better. But whenever a roof is flat, there are just different dynamics. You do need a waterproof barrier. Even though ours is sloped, the water doesn't run off fast enough. So you need a completely waterproof barrier under the shingles. Now, you might just think all roofs have a waterproof barrier. They don't. Shingles are made to push the water off, and it doesn't have to be waterproof underneath. Now, a tile roof is typically waterproof underneath because it just doesn't race off the same way. But the pitch of the roof, the style of the pitch, it does affect your insurance premiums at times. Okay, moving on from roofs, the number 4 thing to consider is flood zones. Now, all of Florida is in a flood zone, so it's not like you can just be out of a flood zone. You could be in flood zone X, which is not likely to flood. That's what I'm in. We actually sold a townhouse that's 90 feet above sea level a couple months ago, the highest point in the whole Tampa area. It's still in flood zone X. It's still in a flood zone. So flood zones affect your insurance costs because your lender might require you to carry flood insurance. It's very easy to decipher. It's very easy for us to kind of show you exactly how it's going. A lot of these areas have been remapped within the past few years. And then you might ask the question, well, what if I get remapped and I'm in a flood zone all of a sudden? Well, first of all, the flood zone isn't going to move like a mile. But if your neighbor's in a flood zone and you're not in a flood zone, then yeah, there's probably that threat in the future. Another note on flood zones, sometimes you'll see a house that backs up to a lake in a flood zone. That doesn't always mean the whole property is in a flood zone. It might just mean that back strip of the property is in a flood zone. So if you did want to build a structure back there and you want to insure it, then you'd have to carry flood insurance on it. Okay, and finally, this question comes up all the time, so I do want to address it about evacuation zones. What is the difference between flood zones and evacuation zones? Sometimes people say, I don't want to be in an evacuation zone because I don't want to have to evacuate if there's a storm. Evacuation zones and flood zones are not the same thing. Sometimes you'll see big chunks of areas that are evacuation zones because if there's a big storm, your emergency services are going to get cut off and prioritized to those affected by the storm. So in the middle of Pinellas County, you're going to get evacuated even though you're high and dry because there won't be emergency services. Now, it's not like martial law. They're not coming down the road in tanks and telling everybody to get out. It's a little bit more libertarian than that, but they do want you to get out while you can because it gets really hard to get out once a storm is set in or once traffic gets really bad. And there's specific evacuation routes they want you to take to get out of the area. And then they're working on expanding those up further into the state. Specifically, Veterans Expressway, which is 589, they're working on expanding that all the way up to I-10 on the north side of the state so that people can get out easier. Okay, a couple of final points too, because these get asked about a lot. Well, let's talk about Citizens Insurance real quick. Citizens was set up as a last resort. It never meant to insure so much of the state. So they lose money every single year and they have to get bailed out by the state every single year. They run out of their reinsurance fund, which, real quick, reinsurance. Imagine that the insurance company is the mafia, which is all very easy for us to imagine because we pay them to protect us, right? Well, they pay a bigger mafia called reinsurance to protect them in case they have tons of claims. They pay a bunch of money to this reinsurance fund that invests all this money so that whenever there's massive, massive claims, hundreds of millions of dollars, there's extra money to pay those out. But Citizens has its own reinsurance fund, and then there's also big reinsurance funds owned by like General Electric and stuff like that. Reinsurance kind of is the backing of these at a very high level. But Citizens goes through this thing called depopulation. Every single year they do it. They pick a group of Citizens customers and they depopulate them. What that means is they say, hey, we're dropping you and here's your alternative that you're going to get signed up for. On this house I'm in right now, that happened to me not too long ago and my policy went from $2,100 to $2,700, not with Citizens anymore. So my premium did go up, but my policy actually got a lot better, which is fine. It went up $600 a year, which was a shock at first. Obviously that gets spaced out, monthly and goes to the mortgage company. They pay that for me. And then real quick about flood insurance. Now, there's all different kinds of flood insurance companies. Most of them are part of what's called the NFIP, the National Flood Insurance Program. This is a program backed by FEMA. So whenever they have claims, they're completely regulated by FEMA. Even their premium increases are regulated by FEMA. All that means you have to deal with the federal government when you have a flood claim, which is super annoying. But a lot of mortgage companies, if you're in a flood zone, they don't even want you going to a private flood carrier. They want you going to an NFIP carrier because it's just more predictable actually how they work. Now, both of my flood claims, an adjuster came down from Indiana, same guy both times, which was kind of nice, we're kind of friends now, and he did a great job. But it's always these kind of storm adjusters that come to these storm affected areas and help resolve this for the big carriers. Okay, I know that was tons of insurance info. I hope this is helpful. These are big questions we get again and again and again when people are moving here. Big fears that people have related to moving here. If you have any questions, we would love to hear from you. We could also sign up for our next webinar. We will not have the insurance broker on there every single time, but we will occasionally. If you do want a replay of that webinar, we'd be happy to send it to you as well. But as always, call, text, or email, especially if you made it to the end of the video. You probably have a couple more questions, or we would just love to connect and see how we can best help. Thanks for coming by.